In this presentation, we will cover the topic of food preservation. Spoilage occurs when bacteria or fungi grow in food. The microorganisms decompose food cells and chemicals, resulting in a loss of nutrients. Spoiled food can be very toxic to humans, and ingesting food well past its shelf life may result in disease, food poisoning, or, in severe cases, death. To combat this and prevent food from becoming spoiled too quickly, humans learned of several methods to keep food fresh for longer. There are many ways of preserving foods. Some of the oldest methods are salting, spicing, smoking, pickling, and drying. Refrigeration, a method that was first developed in the early to mid-19th century, and fermentation. With the help of modern technology, new methods of food preservation have been introduced to society. Canning, pasteurization, freezing, irradiation, and addition of chemicals. Note that the last two methods, irradiation and the addition of chemicals, and pasteurization, are the most modern methods of food preservation listed. Canning and freezing have existed for a long time, but are listed as modern methods because the ways foods are canned and frozen nowadays are much more technical than how they were done in the past. Salting was a common method of food preservation before the invention of the modern refrigerator. This method takes advantage of a spontaneous process known as osmosis. Osmosis describes the movement of a solvent, in this case water, through a semi-permeable membrane from an area of a low concentration of a solution or substance, in this case salt, to an area of a higher concentration of that solution or substance. By surrounding food in salt, water is drawn out of the food. Since certain types of bacteria and fungi require water to grow, the lack of water in these salted foods prevents these microorganisms from growing. Spicing is another method of preservation. It involves putting spices in and or out of specific foods. Some microorganisms do not like environments with spices and thus will not be privy to making spiced foods their home. Smoking is a method of drying that is very similar to salting in that water is taken away from foods via smoke and low heat. As mentioned before, certain types of bacteria and fungi do not grow in waterless environments, so smoked foods do not spoil as quickly. Pickling involves soaking foods in brine or vinegar. Several types of microorganisms do not grow in acidic, salty environments. Thus, foods in these liquids remain preserved for much longer. Drying or dehydration is much like salting and smoking. In fact, smoking and salting can be considered methods of drying. This method involves leaving food out to soak in sunlight or in warm artificial environments until a certain time has elapsed. The rays of either the sun or these artificial lights terminates bacterial and fungal growth. That way, food is kept preserved. Refrigeration is a method that describes cooling foods down to temperatures a little above freezing point, resulting in a dramatic decrease in bacteria and fungal growth to the point where these microorganisms' movements are slowed to a crawl. Thus, food takes longer to spoil. The creation of alcohol is a result of fermentation. Fermentation is a method that, ironically, takes advantage of these properties of very specific types of yeast and bacteria. With the help of these microorganisms, carbohydrates are either converted to alcohol or organic acids under anaerobic conditions. In the method of canning, foods are placed in jars and heated to high temperatures, destroying bacteria and fungi. After most of any existing microorganisms are exterminated, the jars or cans are cooled and sold. Pasteurization is a method that often involved in the preservation of liquid, typically milk products. Foods, either packaged or non-packaged, are heated to a temperature that does not go higher than boiling point. Then, after many more steps, food is cooled, packed, and sold. Freezing is similar to refrigeration in that foods are cooled, but this time at or far below freezing point. Microorganism growth is slow to a crawl, and food is preserved for longer. Irradiation is a modern method that is done by exposing foods to high levels of ionizing radiation, effectively killing bacteria, fungi, or any small insects and pests. Lower quality and contaminated food may become marketable when irradiated. This process of preservation is disputed throughout the world, as exposing foods to radiation to keep them fresh is quite a health concern. Specific types of chemicals kill specific types of microorganisms and pests, but may not affect the cells and nutrients present in foods. So by exposing foods to these types of chemicals, bacteria, fungi, and pests can be easily determined can be easily terminated while food remains fresh. This method, like irradiation, is disputed because of health concerns. With every new technological development, food scientists find new, cheaper, and safer methods to increase the shelf life of the invaluable substances we put in our stomachs. Who knows when the day a man and/or woman discovers a way to keep food fresh forever arrives. Thank you for watching.